Holy Habits is an adventure in Christian discipleship that takes people on a journey through Luke's cameo portrait of the very first Christian community that we see in Acts chapter 2 and verses 42 to 47. The Holy Habits resources have been developed to help people explore this way of living. There is a series of 11 habit booklets, an introductory guide, and then a booklet for each of the 10 habits that Luke presents in Acts chapter 2, 42 to 47. We encourage people to explore these habits creatively and imaginatively and enthusiastically. Deciding on the first habit is obviously very important. In all the pilots, interestingly, they chose to start with eating together because they saw that was as a great way of bringing folk together. Having said that, you don't have to start there. Other patterns would be perfectly valid. Some people think it might be helpful to follow through the habits in the order that Luke presents them, in which case you would begin with biblical teaching. But in shaping the programme and deciding the order, a lot of that will depend upon local circumstances. It will depend upon what time of year you begin and how the habits fit naturally with particular seasons and times of the year, particular celebrations. So for example, again, a number of the pilots opted to look at gladness and generosity over the Christmas season because that fitted naturally and well there. Other places have considered prayer during the Lenten season because there's an obvious synergy. And again, that's important because it prevents holy habits from becoming overburdensome if it can fit very naturally and well alongside other priorities and needs. All of the launches so far have begun with a large gathering in a large space. Interestingly, most of them in public spaces. So Birmingham began at the International Conference Centre in Birmingham. In Bristol, they hired a room in a city centre hotel. In Dudley, they used the local college. In Romsey, which was just one church doing this, they actually did it in their local church. But all of them had eating together as part of that event. They modelled other habits as well. So there was worship. In one or two cases, they broke bread together. There was prayer. There was a rich sense of fellowship. So right from the get-go, several habits were being explored and experienced all together. After the first event, people then begin to explore the habits in their Sunday worship or other main worship event, in their small groups, in their youth groups, and so on. People are encouraged to read and reflect at home, so there's reading suggestions in the material, and just to observe and practice these habits in every aspect of life. So eating together, for example, is not just about a supper or a meal at church. It's how I eat my food together with my colleagues at work, or with my lonely neighbour, or with the people who live rough on the streets. All of these habits can be applied and experienced in every aspect of life. The holy habits are for all generations, from the youngest child up to the oldest person. So it's important to make sure that all people are included. So leaders of group need to be involved. Pastoral visitors need to think when they're visiting elderly people, perhaps with those with dementia, folk who are housebound, how can they engage in this as well? Because this is basically a godly way of being human. So it is for all people. So leaders of groups and others need to reflect on how it can be applied into those particular contexts. People do get tired, and I think we're helped in exploring habits by a phrase that Luke uses twice in Acts 2, 42 to 47. Little phrase, 3 words, day by day. The first followers of Jesus lived this way of life day by day. So finding a pace, finding a pattern to follow, thinking, how can I live this simply today, not worrying too much about tomorrow, but living day by day. I think if we use that rhythmic approach to discipleship, that can be really, really helpful. To sustain the spiritual devotion within the resources, there are suggestions as to how that can be done. There are particular suggestions about how people and groups of people can go further or deeper with the habit, because again, this isn't just about exploring them for 2 months and then forgetting about them. So we offer resources, we offer materials to help people think how they can sustain this over a lifetime and how they can go ever further and deeper with both their thinking about this and their living of it. If a church devoted itself to exploring these holy habits for 2 years, what we would hope to see is a renewal of the culture of that church as one of discipleship formation. That was the big aim and hope when we first developed these resources in Birmingham. They recognised actually that discipleship formation was not one of their greatest strengths, so they decided that they would address that. They devoted themselves to that with the aim and the aspiration and the hope that it would transform the culture of that group of churches and the individuals' churches that constituted that. So that is our big hope, that actually by exploring holy habits, it will help people to engage with this model of church that Luke offers in Acts 2, that Barrett argues that Luke offers in order that we might imitate it. And of course that passage acts with the wonderful phrase, and day by day the Lord added to their number. And many commentators, including people like David Watson, have said, is it any wonder that that happened given the way of life that those believers shared? Because who wouldn't want to be part of a community that was noted for gladness and generosity? Who wouldn't want to be part of a community that gave to anybody who was in need? Who wouldn't want to be part of a community that had vibrant worship and deep prayer? So our hope is that we will see the culture of the church renewed, and day by day we will see new people being added to.